room out next door 4 months ago for a gentleman that's celebrating 50 years of being sober. So he's got a big party. Yeah, I know, it's definitely worth clapping for sure. And so we've got a live country band, and we're just going to go till 9 o'clock next door. So, but I make a promise to you now, I will not rent the room out any in the future when it's Sound of Kingman. So you guys can have the main room, and I think it's amazing that we have this crowd. It is absolutely amazing, and I love the speakers that you guys have had so far.
Well, I know.
For sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're very, very welcome. Robin, would you like to say something?
I would like to say something.
All right, very good.
I always like to talk.
Off me.
Can't stop me from talking. Okay, my name is Robin Gordon. I'm the chair of Sounds of Kingman. I'd like to thank you for coming out this afternoon for the last of our series of speakers for the winter. We do have all of our bands scheduled for our summer series down at Metcalf Park. If you'd like a schedule, they're at the table by the door on the way out if you'd like to pick one up. Our first concert is April the 12th. It's going to be Arizona Thunder, so down at Metcalf Park. So hopefully we'll see you there. Bring a blanket and a chair and enjoy the nice park. So this afternoon we have the honor of presenting Mr. Jim Hinckley. Jim Hinckley knows more about Kingman's history than probably all of us in this room put together. And we're lucky to have him here to talk to us today. And I want you all to give Mr. Hinckley a round of applause. He received a wonderful award in California last week from the governor of California, thanking him for all he does for historic preservation. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. So we have a celebrity speaking to us today.
Now, I'm going to need a bigger
You're
hat.
going to need a bigger hat. Thank you all for coming, and with that, I'll turn it over to Jim. I know that he didn't come here to listen to me talk. Thank you.
Folks, I want to thank everyone for turning out today and supporting Sounds of Kingman, and for being here. Like I say, it kind of gives me a big head. It's kind of funny. I've developed a split personality. I'm just Jim Hinckley, and people show up to see me beat my gums. It's kind of entertaining. All the way down from Las Vegas, huh? Gosh dang it.
Barely made it.
Now I do feel important. A lot of people ask me how long I've been in Kingman, and I'm one of the newcomers. I've only been here since about 1966. So, well, I thought this would be appropriate for today since we got I-11 out here. And everybody loves what they've done to I-40. As Crossroads of the past and future, we've been using that for a while. A few of you might recognize that from a couple of years ago. You know, this is the way that what I was always thought Kingman was. And when I first moved here, this pretty much sums it up. And, there's a kind of an urban legend that Kingman was founded by people who, well, they stopped while they waited for the wind to quit blowing, and everybody else just broke down here. I may or may not have been perpetrating that legend for a while now. But we arrived in Kingman a little bit different than most folks, but we ended up here kind of on purpose. My pa was Navy during World War II, and then in Coast Guard. He was Coast Guard on the Great Lakes, and you can cue the Twilight Zone music since we're talking about Route 66. But in the summer of '66, my pa got out of the service, had enough of the ocean, the water, folded a map, Western United States, and threw a dart. And that's how we ended up in Kingman. But the story starts a little bit before I got here. And it started, as a matter of fact, a couple thousand years ago. Yeah, it's been kind of lost, overshadowed. We get caught up in John Wayne movies and westerns. And we forget sometimes that there were a lot of folks here before that. And Kingman Mineral Park, right there in the center, there's a turquoise mine up there. And that's been in operation for somewhere around 1,000 years. And there was an extensive trade route associated with turquoise here in the Southwest, all the way over to Gran Quivira and Pecos, New Mexico. And now through spectrographic analysis, they've determined that some of the turquoise from Kingman ended up as far south as Central America and possibly as far east as Cahokia near East St. Louis. Pretty extensive trade route. And then you had a trade route with shells, seashells, abalone, and other shells, trading with turquoise across the Southwest. And that branched into trails pretty much throughout the western and central United States over the last 1,000 years. For our story today, we'll start with Father Garces. Made several expeditions out here with the Spanish Chronicle. He was chronicled several expeditions, and for our story, what we're really interested in is the ones here in the Kingman area. And he made a couple trips through here, one through Union Pass and one through Sitgreaves Pass. And in Sitgreaves Pass, if you've ever driven up towards Oatman, there's a place there called Ed's Camp. And that is was originally Little Meadows. And that was a campground on these Native American trade routes. And Father Garces chronicled staying there during his expeditions in 1776. So we had other dry roasted nuts besides myself out here. This fella here is overlooked a lot, and he should be in an illustrated guide to like an encyclopedia. His picture should be under adventure, eccentricity. And eccentricity is an interesting word. It means people who are a little bit different. And there's a fine line between different and nuttier than a truckload of praline. And this fella kind of got close to all of that. His name is Francois Javier Aubry. He was a French Canadian. And his exploits were pretty much legendary, even though they were short-lived. And we have a lot around Kingman associated with this man. Aubrey Valley along Route 66, where they're doing the black ferrets now. That's west of Seligman. There's Aubrey Peak. He started out in St. Louis, learned the trade there, and then went out on his own. And I feel sorry for this man's horses, but 21 years old, he left Independence, Missouri, and made his first trip to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And it was there that he discovered fame and fortune, so to speak. He started out, and I don't have any evidence that drinking was involved. But I have to assume that nobody would do this for any other reason. And no good story of adventure starts with they were having salad and tea. Well, he took a bet that he could break a record riding from Santa Fe to Independence, Missouri. And he did it in 14 days. I have no idea how many horses he rode into the ground. And then he made 3 trips between Independence and Santa Fe. And one of the trips he did in 5 days and 16 hours. They credited him with supernatural powers. And then he turned his attention to California and took caravans down the Rio Grande, the Gila Rivers, San Francisco via Tucson, Los Angeles, run 3,500 sheep, mules across the desert. And on his return trip, he started following some of these Native American trade routes, and he got a hold of the chronicles of Father Garces. And he took a trip across northwestern Arizona. And then returned to New Mexico and made quite a journal. And these journals would be instrumental in some of the other things that were developed in the West by some of the early American explorers. Mr. Aubrey had an unfortunate incident, and again, I have a feeling that drinking was involved. And a rule of thumb, if this ever comes up, not that it probably will, don't challenge someone to a knife fight naked in a grave if that fellow wrestles bears for a hobby. And that was the end of Mr. Aubrey. Lorenzo Sitgreaves was really the first American explorer out this direction. And he used a lot of Father Garces information and the records of Aubrey on his first expeditions from Albuquerque out to San Diego. And this went north of Kingman. through Union Pass, or excuse me, Sedgreaves Pass, and his second expedition went through Union Pass. And Union Pass became the primary route that was chosen because, as you might imagine, Sedgreaves Pass might have been a little harder than Union Pass to get through with wagons. And there was a lot of water in Union Pass as well. Whipple came through, followed basically the same routes, and he started out surveying for the railroad. The railroad got put on hold because of a little thing called the Civil War. But you notice on this map, it was kind of interesting because a lot of the trade routes, of course, water was pretty important. And so he followed the Bill Williams River south to the Colorado River and then up to the Mojave villages, basically around where Needles, California is today. Or as we used to reference it, Needless, California. Beale, I don't know if anybody's really familiar with the story of Lieutenant Edward Fitzgerald Beale. This is one of those fellows, somehow his name, he just slipped through the cracks of history. We know of him because of Beale Street, the Hotel Beale, and a few other things. But this fellow's exploits, he made Indiana Jones look like a Cub Scout. He started out as a naval midshipman, and he happened to be there when the Republic of Texas became part of the United States. He was one of the witnesses on that document. And he got himself into other adventures like during the Mexican-American War, down at the Battle of San Pasqual. He and a Delaware Indian scout crossed a couple hundred miles of desert to get reinforcements when they were surrounded. When the gold rush in California, President Buchanan sent him to California to verify this was true. And that entailed a few things like a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico, crossing the Isthmus of Panama, dealing with a few things there, and then up the coast and then cross country back to Washington. And when the United States started looking at claiming the Oregon Territory, they were concerned that Britain might object. So he became kind of a James Bond, went undercover to Britain to test the waters to see if they would squabble over it. So when he got this job, this must have seemed like kind of a piece of cake, mapping a wagon road across northwestern Arizona and New Mexico. Eventually the Beale Wagon Road would stretch all the way back to Fort Smith, Arkansas. And it wasn't just enough that Beale had the task of surveying this wagon road, the first federally funded road in the Southwest. He got the task of also testing the viability of camels. The fellow who came up with that idea was the Secretary of War, a fellow named Jefferson Davis. Shortly after that, he made a career move, became the President of the Confederacy. I don't know if that was really the right direction for that career. This tied in, the Beale Wagon Road went to the Colorado River, like say the Mojave villages, roughly in the Needles, Fort Mojave area. And it tied in with another Native American trade route across the Mojave Desert. This became the Mojave Road, one of the primary desert crossings before the arrival of the railroad. And of course, this figures into Kingman. The Beale Road was right through here, different areas. You had Atlantic Springs, Beale Springs, and going up over Union Pass, Coyote Springs. Became an important part of this. And large sections of the Beale Wagon Road tied into military roads that were developed in this area. Captain Hardy established Hardyville. Fort Mojave was a bit to the south. Hardy put in a road that followed parts of the Beale Wagon Road through Coyote Pass, through Kingman, going from the Colorado River to the territorial capital at Prescott. And then the Mojave-Prescott Military Road followed the Hardy Road. And this kind of puts Kingman on the map because we had water and we had roads. We had transportation. Next came the railroad, the Atlantic and Pacific Railroad. And it's kind of interesting. They almost bankrupted themselves. They eventually did, building what they called Johnson Canyon. They underestimated that quite a lot, the Johnson Canyon Railroad Tunnel up by Ash Fork. It became kind of an engineering marvel. They figured it would take 6 months. 2 years later, they completed that tunnel. And there was a fellow named Shenfield. Anybody familiar with Mr. Shenfield, Conrad Shenfield here in Kingman? He was a contractor, so making supplies for the railroad. Well, apparently, I just recently learned that Mr. Shenfield, he got a town site application approved and got to set up the site of Kingman. It was originally Shenfield Camp. But apparently, Mr. Shenfield got a little impatient. He didn't wait for full authorization. He just began selling city lots. And that created a little bit of a problem because he was selling things you don't own. But you know, it's all profit. If you sell things you don't own, you can sell them cheaper and still make a good buck. Now we'll fast forward just a tad bit. We've got the railroad here. And then came the National Old Trails Road. This was kind of a pivotal moment in development of the Southwest, but specifically Kingman, because it brought modern era, shall we say, to Kingman. The Daughters of the American Revolution came up with this idea. During these years, and to kind of backtrack a tad bit, it's just astounding how fast we adapted to the automobile, especially here in the Southwest rural areas. In 1893, the Duryea brothers came up with the first automobiles for sale. They started manufacturing automobiles out of Springfield, Massachusetts. But nobody knew what to do with these things. Barnum and Bailey Circus in 1896 gave a Duryea motor wagon top billing over the albino and the dog-faced boy at the circus. Montgomery Ward said it was a fad you need to take the children to see before it passes. Another visionary. 1898, we had the first automobile race in the United States. 1898, we had our first pedestrian struck and killed by an automobile. And as my pa said, it was better to fill your head with useless knowledge than no knowledge at all. I don't know how slow Mr. Bliss was, but he was struck and killed by an electric taxi cab in New York City in 1898. In 1900, we had the first auto show, Madison Square Gardens in New York. Over 40 manufacturers displaying their cars. 1901, Alexander Winton, a Scotch immigrant, started a bicycle company and then went into automobiles. He wanted to prove the viability of driving an automobile across the United States and push the need for good roads. Obviously, he was trying to sell Winton automobiles. So he took with him a gentleman from Scientific American as a journalist. They left San Francisco. 2 weeks later, they were in Nevada and they gave up because there was no roads, no gas. And again, I think drinking was involved. 1903, Dr. Horatio Jackson accepted a $50 bet to drive an automobile from San Francisco to the East Coast. The problem is he'd never driven a car, didn't know anything about cars, so he bought a used Winton, hired a mechanic, acquired a bulldog along the way, and set out for the East Coast, and he did it. Became the first person to travel across the United States. 63 days. He won the $50 bet. He says it only cost him $8,200. That made him the winner. But we fast forward this a bit. We had the Automobile Club of Southern California formed in 1899, AAA in 1903, and we started developing a push for good roads, pushing for federal government to get involved in creating a federal road system, as Senator Henry Clay had suggested back in 1830. And they started hiring these people to come up with roads, promote tourism, encourage people to take their cars out, see America, destroy their cars, buy a new one. And one of the fellows who did this was an intrepid explorer named A.L. Westgard. He started out as a Norwegian immigrant railroad survey engineer and then started working for these automobile clubs. And he had the three talents that put him above all the others. He was tenacious and tough. He was able to beat his gums and entertain an audience. And he was a prolific writer, and he was a pretty good photographer, so he created magic lantern slideshows and sold the idea of road trips. One of the roads that he came up with was Trail to Sunset. had its eastern terminus at the same place that Route 66 would in 1926 in Chicago. And it ran basically diagonal across the country to Yuma, Arizona, the ocean-to-ocean highway, down through Springerville and down that direction. But it was a short-lived endeavor. Other roads came in, and we started having all these automobile associations and good roads associations and clubs, and the Lincoln Highway Association, and gosh, there was hundreds. Pikes Peak, ocean-to-ocean highway. And the problem with these were they were dependent on donations from private individuals, communities, from corporations, automobile companies. And you can imagine how bad this worked out, because Kingman doesn't pay their dues this week. So the highway goes through Kingman on Wednesday. On Friday, it goes through Wickiup. A bit confusing for people. And then you had highway signs and traffic signs there weren't any. You just follow the blue stripes on poles and turn left at the bridge that used to be painted yellow. And they actually had things happen, like up in Wyoming. One road association put in this road across to Yellowstone National Park and up through Wyoming. And the road made an odd 70-mile loop for no reason up through this river valley. And it turned out the reason was his uncle had a farm up there, and the kids liked to see cars. The National Old Trails Road was the brainchild of the Daughters of the American Revolution. And they wanted to knit together America's early highways, historic trails, like the National Road, Santa Fe Trail, and these different roads, with a coast-to-coast highway. And initially here in Arizona, in fact, over by New Mexico around Las Vegas, the National Old Trails Road connected with the Trail to Sunset, and it ran diagonal through Springerville and down to Yuma, Arizona. And Thomas Devine, the father of Andy Devine, and some local business leaders got together, and they attended the 1913 National Old Trails Road Convention in Kansas City, Missouri. And they had a compelling argument to reroute the National Old Trails Road along the railroad in northwestern Arizona and through the Mojave Desert. And two of the reasons made perfect sense, and they could become an advertising campaign. One was scenery. You could promote tourism. The Sedona, Grand Canyon were all short detours. They were, great things to see. And the other was good hotels. Restaurants, because you had, like the El Garces and Needles, you had these places established. Otherwise, it was, pardon the expression, but it was a bit of a crapshoot on what kind of lodging and hotels you would find. In 1915, Emily Post followed the National Old Trails West, and her book, By Motor to the Golden Gate, is a great read. You can pick it up on Amazon. Been reprinted. But she talked about in Kansas going to a hotel, and they always checked the rooms, and they decided her niece were traveling together, and her nephew was the driver. They decided to sleep in the car, and the hotel owner was incensed. He told them that he ran a class establishment, first class. He changed the sheets on the beds every single month. So the National Old Trails Road got rerouted because of Thomas Devine, and these guys went, and they sold the idea at the National Old Trails Road Convention. The third reason the road was put through, and they agreed to this, didn't make a good advertising campaign. But when you destroyed their car on the road, you could put the remains on the train and send it home. Emily Post found that out when she made it as far as Arizona from New York. And the National Old Trails Road, a lot like Route 66, it was actually marketed as the Main Street of America. Starting in 1913, Judge Lowe put together an advertising campaign for this. But the National Old Trails Road started getting a lot of attention by 1914, 1915 for the same reasons that Route 66 did. The Southwest, the allure of Native American cultures, the scenery. And it got a big boost in 1914 with the last of the Desert Classic automobile races. Now this series of races, I'm convinced, had to start with drinking. Because nobody in their right mind, even if they were kicked in the head by a mule, would attempt this. There was a group of business owners in Phoenix. One was the owner of the Arizona Republican newspaper, now the Arizona Republic. And they got into a heated discussion about, this would be 1908, 1909, which is more viable, gasoline or steam-powered automobiles. So they hatched up an automobile across the desert from Los Angeles to Phoenix. The winner of that was a fellow named Doc Fenner. He did it in a 3-year-old white steamer. But they did this every year, and the race kept getting bigger, more extravagant. It always started the same place, Hotel Hollenbeck in Los Angeles, ended at the fairgrounds in Phoenix. And every year it was a different course. And if you notice the one line over below Yuma, that was kind of an interesting race, and apparently their cartographer might have been involved with drinking, because he mapped out an interesting route that crossed the border and created an international incident when we had the racers crossing into Mexico. But for our story, the one that we really want is the 1914 race, the dark black line, because that race followed the National Old Trails Road through Kingman, Seligman, Ash Fork, south through Prescott, down Yardell Hill to Phoenix. By this time, the race had got international attention. It was attracting the big boys, like a fellow you might have heard of, Louis Chevrolet, Barney Oldfield, a few of those fellas. You want to have some fun at a car show next time? Go to a car show and tell people that Chevrolet started as an import. That'll always get attention. Louis Chevrolet and his brothers arrived from France and built their empire. Started out with bicycles, interestingly enough. That's a story for another day. To give you an idea how we called this the National Old Trails Road, we called these highways, but they were kind of like highways in name only. And to give you an idea what people could expect from these kind of travels, this is the journal from Edsel Ford. And if you're not familiar with Edsel, Edsel's not just the car that looks like a Buick sucking a lemon. It was Henry Ford's son. And he and his college buddies set out for California, a lot like tourists on Route 66. They were headed for the Panama Pacific Exposition in California, but they also wanted to see Santa Fe. They wanted to see the Grand Canyon. And this tells you pretty much everything you need to know about the drive. They left Williams, Arizona that morning, arrived at the Brunswick Hotel in Kingman at midnight. They figured it was a good day's run. They only broke one spring on the struts and had a couple flat tires. This makes A.L. Westgard's trips even more amazing, because this is 1915. A.L. Westgard was making some of these trips in 1910, 1909, 1911, and in 1 year, A.L. Westgard covered over 20,000 miles in the west and southwest, mapping out roads. It was quite an era of change and transition. Kind of a blurring of the line, if you will, between past and present, the future. Can you imagine that? Of course, that's downtown Kingman. You might recognize Central Commercial on the side there at 4th Street. By the 1920s, Kingman was well established as a transportation hub. We had Greyhound, we had bus service, national, we had the rail service, we had, and now we were getting the National Old Trails Road, bringing people through. To give you an idea on the traffic on the National Old Trails Road, in 1915, the year Edsel Ford came through town, Emily Post also came through that same year. She wrote her book, Travel on this Road. More than 20,000 people attended the Panama Pacific Exposition in California that arrived from outside the state by automobile. And over 30% of those people traveled the National Old Trails Road. And then, to add to this, we had air service. The first of which was Western Air Express. They were one of the earliest. They were a real pioneer in transport by air. They did some passenger service in a crude way. Most of it was cargo, but they had a terminal here in Kingman. Our first airfield was established here in Kingman in 1919, just over towards where the cemetery's at. And that was a military field set up initially for aerial survey of the Grand Canyon. Then we had Western Air Express, and then TAT, Transcontinental Air Transport. And Charles Lindbergh was involved with that project a lot. And it was the first successful coast-to-coast passenger air service. And it combined kind of a passenger plane and train service. Sped up the time across the country quite a lot. And the picture down at the bottom on the left side is kind of interesting. The field for Transcontinental Air Transport is over behind Arby's where Brown Drilling is. Brown Drilling is actually in the Port Kingman building. It's still there. But that little car down at the bottom would transport people down to the railroad depot if they were continuing that trip, because they only flew during the day. If you were continuing your trip by train, you could catch the train downtown, or you could stay at the Hotel Beale. This is interesting too, because I got a little something here. When I was doing some research on these airlines and the things that were coming in, there was an editorial in the Arizona Republican newspaper about 1929, and it was talking about Kingman, just glowing praise that we had Route 66, we had the railroad, we had passenger service, we had mining, agriculture. And it said that savvy investors will look to Kingman as it soon eclipses Phoenix. Obviously, we don't rush things here. And of course, our aviation history wouldn't be complete unless we talked about this little gem, the Kingman Air Base, Army Air Base, where the Kingman Army Airfield is now. All along Route 66, World War II transformed, everything, especially places like Kingman, rural places. At one point, this was one of the largest flexible gunnery schools in the United States, and then after the war, it became one of the largest storage depots for military aircraft. And this put Kingman on the map in lots of different ways. We had a lot of entertainment here. Bob Hope was here. The Three Stooges. Three Stooges had nothing to do with city council. Let's see. But we have also another part of putting Kingman on the map is film and celebrity associations. The first movie, the earliest movie I'm aware of was Harry Carey. Has nothing to do with what might have happened to your stock portfolio this last week. But Harry Carey, Ace of the Saddle, Greta Garbo, Will Rogers was a frequent guest here. Came in with TAT Airlines. He was a good friend of Tap Duncan's. Ginger Rogers. It's pretty amazing when you start looking at all the celebrities that showed up in Kingman. Joe DiMaggio stopped here for coffee and got recognized, and a bunch of kids started swarming the cafe. He ended up playing ball with the kids downtown. Louis L'Amour started his boxing career here in Kingman. He was working at the Catherine Mines and had a boxing ring at the Sunk Bar down in the basement of the Beale Hotel. And there's a rumor that he went a couple sparring rounds with Jack Dempsey. I don't know that for sure, but Jack Dempsey was a guest at the Hotel Beale during those years. And of course, I mentioned Thomas Devine. Andy's father was kind of instrumental in the route that Route 66 would eventually follow across northern Arizona. And Andy went on to a little bit of fame. He kind of forgotten today, but he was rather a prolific actor. About a 50-year career, always a sideshow. He wasn't born in Kingman. He was actually born in Flagstaff in 1906. But his father bought the Hotel Beale. So Andy grew up here. So Front Street, during an episode of This Is Your Life, they renamed Route 66 Andy Devine Avenue. And this attracted tourists because of Andy's gang, and they knew Andy, and it's another reason to visit Kingman. Kingman's got a great lot of celebrity history. And before anybody asks, I do not have any other photos. Pamela Anderson got in trouble here for being during a Playboy photo shoot. Roadhouse 64 was Roadhouse 66 was filmed almost entirely in Kingman in 1984. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Anybody seen this movie with Johnny Depp? Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas? You've seen it?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. You'll never get that time back. The final scenes in that movie were actually filmed at the Kingman Airport. A few years ago, Arizona Entertainment Hall of Fame inducted Bob Bosbell and Andy Devine. And of course, Bob Bosbell, he was not born here either, but he's got a long association with Kingman and Route 66. His father had quite a few gas stations in this area. The last was the Flying A station up where Lavelli's Garden Arts is now. And Bob's gone on to a few things like True West magazine, art displays in the Van Gogh Museum in the Netherlands, Western Channel, and he's currently doing a series of programs. I was really honored to be on stage with Bob up in Prescott recently. 66 kids' books and program that he's got put together about growing up in Kingman and along Route 66. But when this happened, Andy Devine, Bob Bosbell, they put Kingman on the map. The New York Times, Los Angeles Times, papers in London all talked about this and interviewed Bob about growing up in Kingman. Edge of Eternity, great movie if you want to see what Kingman looked like in the 50s. And it's actually a pretty decent movie. And then we started the Route 66 Walk of Fame. Kind of went dormant on us a little bit, but that got Kingman on the map, talking about our transportation history from all over the world with that. That picture, of course, is the mayor, and Dale Butel, Australia, Route 66 tours. We inducted him into the Walk of Fame, and he brought a television crew from Australia with him the next year. And this is one example. If you get a chance, check out the Route 66 Fed video for this music group. But this is not the only. If you do a Google search of Route 66 music videos, you'd be surprised how many bands have done video filming here in Kingman from all over the world. I have a story to share with that in just a bit. When Route 66 came in, that was the next chapter after the National Old Trails Road. That basically came in, laid right over the top of that, which was over the Beale Wagon Road and the Native American trade routes. So it was the next chapter in the story, but as you can see, now it's signed with US 66 instead of National Old Trails Road, but not much has changed. It's still a dirt road. And another little point of trivia, if you make money with this on Jeopardy, please don't forget where you heard it. I'm easily adopted. But the last section of Route 66 to be fully paved was out by Valentine, Arizona, 1938. In case you don't recognize that corner drugstore there now is El Palacio. And this is pretty prestigious. This plays a role in two eras of Route 66 history in Kingman. The U.S. Highway 66, the reason we're even talking about Route 66 today, there was a group of fellows, Cyrus Avery and some others in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that Cyrus Avery was a real visionary. He had been instrumental with a lot of the early highway development, like National Trails Road. He was with the Albert Pike Highway Association, the Pikes Peak Highways. He instituted the first gasoline tax and created the first highway department in Oklahoma, and developed road grading equipment, different things. And he was commissioned to help put together the U.S. highway system in 24-25. And right after, initially, Route 66 was US 60. This created a few problems because you had to have all the states sign on and approve this. And we got down to the wire where everything was approved except there was a contentious argument over US 60. US 60 ran 66. The governor of Kentucky, for whatever reason, wanted US 60 to go through Kentucky. So Cyrus Avery and John Woodworth of Springfield, Missouri, negotiated. You can have 60 running that direction, we'll take 66. It was originally going to be 62 after that. And somehow getting your kicks on US 60 or 62 just, it doesn't have the same ring. And some of the states were a little upset by this because they had jumped the gun. They were already creating highway signs and maps showing US 66 as US 60. But Avery jumped on the bandwagon and put together a group called the US Highway 66 Association. And they had this up and going. Route 66 came into being on November 11th, 1926, officially. And by spring of 1927, they had the association up and going with two primary goals: lobbying and pushing to have Route 66 paved from end to end, and marketing, tourism. They wanted to make this road the big one. They basically created a chamber of commerce for the Route 66 communities. And they organized regular conventions, and in 1932, Kingman was selected for this. And this is where Route 66 comes into Kingman in about 1932. It came in originally on 4th Street. It followed the National Old Trails Road up 4th Street and across the tracks by the depot. I don't have any concrete information on how big the convention was in 32. But the 1933 convention was in Elk City, Oklahoma. More than 10,000 people attended that event. And I've heard estimates of the Kingman delegation when they had this convention here. It was somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000 people at a time when Kingman had a population of less than 2,000. Gives you an idea how big this was. To give you an idea, Route 66, what it meant to Kingman, is this. 1939, 1 million people on US 66 coming into the state. 40% of the state's visitors came here traveling US 66. That shows you how successful Cyrus Avery was with his marketing campaigns. And going back to that marketing campaign they came up with, the reason we're here today, the reason Route 66 is so famous, they hit the ground running. One of the first things the US Highway 66 Association did was endorse the Bunyan Derby. It was actually the Transcontinental Foot Race. And it was a foot race from Los Angeles to Madison Square Gardens in New York. And the Route 66 Association endorsed it, provided they would run Route 66 to Chicago and then on to New York. The goal being to put 66 on the map. Pardon the pun. So C.C. Pyle was kind of a grifter and sports promoter, but he had a $25,000 purse for this race in 1928. Needless to say, he attracted some professionals. But he also attracted a 19-year-old Cherokee boy from a Route 66 community of Foyle, Oklahoma. And, well, a David and Goliath story. Because by the time they got to Oklahoma, Andy Payne, this boy, was leading the pack. So now we've got the race in the spotlight and Route 66, all the Route 66 communities, including stocking up the Hotel Beale with international journalists that were covering this event. And then in 1932, the Olympics were in Los Angeles, and the U.S. Highway 66 Association took out national ad campaigns promoting this as the scenic road to the Olympics in Los Angeles. Then you had the Grapes of Wrath. Then you had a catchy little tune about getting your kicks on Route 66 and episodes of I Love Lucy and a few other things. So 1939, we had this kind of traffic on Route 66. And after World War II, this increased exponentially. And every one of these towns that were listed in the song is known all over the world. I had the distinct privilege, maybe that's not the right word, but I was in Poland. I got to hear a rendition of the song Route 66 from a drunk Polish polka band. But Kingman is right there. That and our Celebrity Association has put us on the map. That's a little bit of trivia for you. Route 66 never could evolve fast enough to meet the growing traffic on this road. It quickly became a victim of its own success. It was promoted as the main street of America, and everybody's traveling this road, and as I showed you a while ago, 1 million people. Think of that. The road went through Oatman, and you've got 40% of Arizona's traffic on that road. So as early as 1940, they were trying to find different routes. And this is kind of an interesting one. They proposed rerouting Route 66 basically up Coyote Pass where Highway 93, it used to be Highway 466, But they proposed going up Union Pass and Highway 68, roughly, across the valley and down towards Bullhead, the dam, then crossing the river over to Bishop, California, where it would tie in with 466 and continue into Los Angeles. And this got waylaid because of World War II, this whole project. But in 1957-58, when they started surveys for I-40, they dusted this off, and this was going to be the route for I-40. All of this history is still here in Kingman. You have the old Kingman Airport. Sections of 66 on Chadwick Drive was the old alignment, National Trails Road. All of these different segments are here. And people who have a obsession with Route 66, they seek these things out. There was a lot of folks this was a grassroots issue, and it's really kind of fitting for the legacy of Thomas Devine, because, you know, like I say, he and some of these business owners in Seligman, Needles, but specifically Kingman, were responsible for getting the National Trails Road rerouted across northwestern Arizona, and that became Route 66. And those conventions, that was the catalyst for this event in 2014. And it was really grassroots. Dora Manley, Steve Wagner, a lot of local folks got behind this. They got endorsement from the Route 66 Alliance. Michael Wallace, voice of the sheriff in the cars at that time, he had an annual event, the International Route 66 Festivals. This was largely, the concept was to recreate the old US Highway 66 conventions. And a lot of people don't realize how transformative this was for the entire Route 66 community, this event. This was the first time that we had representatives from all state associations here. We had Kaiser Barthuli from the National Park Service Route 66 Corridor Preservation Program. The first meetings to discuss a European Route 66 festival took place here. Larry Klontz, the Economic Development Director in Shamrock, Texas, we had representatives here from Tesla. He met with them, and 9 months later, he had charging stations at the U-Drop-In in Shamrock, Texas. The Electric Vehicle Museum was started. The theme for this event, by the way, was Crossroads of the Past and Future. Changed everything. We did a conference, 3-day conference, first time since the conventions by the U.S. Highway Association. We had people speak from Kaiser, Michael Wallace, Route 66 associations, and that, Cheryl Eicher Jett from the Illinois Association picked up on the idea, and that it became the annual Route 66 Miles of Possible conference. It's held every year in Illinois. So it's a pretty transformative event. And it's not just Route 66, but Route 66 is viewed as the quintessential American road trip. And it's because of a Film and Celebrity Association. And you know, when you put all of this together, I don't know of any community on the Route 66 corridor that has such a rich and diverse history as Kingman does. A lot of communities will have an association with Native Americans, trade routes, or they'll have a Film and Celebrity Association, or they'll have Civil War, you know, something. But I don't know of any community that has it all in one package besides Kingman. But all of this, the films, the movies, the song, all of it has made Route 66 literally a destination for legions of people from all over the world. Well, I had something, I had the privilege of speaking at the Second European Festival in Zlin, Czechia. I'm the little fella there in between all those big fellas on the left side, second picture down. I had a chance to speak with a fellow there from the Czech Republic, and he talked about the song Route 66. And he said, growing up behind the Iron Curtain, he listened to the song Get Your Kicks on Route 66 on Radio Free America. He watched bootleg copies of Easy Rider that were filmed along Route 66. And he said for his generation, Route 66 came to symbolize the freedom that the Statue of Liberty had for a previous generation. And now, of course, we've got Route 66 associations, all over the world. Tour companies that specialize in Route 66 tours. But almost all of the companies that specialize in Route 66 tours, they always combine an element of film and celebrity history and Southwest scenery. And again, Kingman comes out on top. This is an ad from a tour company, Route Trip USA. They're based in England and ranging for a unique lodging option, Tin Can Alley on 66 in Kingman. They're now linking those advertisements with the Beale Street Theater and advertising that everything's walking distance downtown. And they're also including on their events calendar events in Kingman, so you can combine your stay at Tin Can Alley with events and theater performances in Kingman. The Centennial has really put the emphasis on Route 66 communities. But most of the media that I've been dealing with, including the Chicago Tribune, they have limited budgets and time for putting people out on the road. So their focus is on the communities listed in the song, Get Your Kicks on Route 66. And of course, one of those is, Kingman, Arizona. This is a Chicago-based company, Tulane America. And I mentioned that a lot of these companies tie Route 66 with film and celebrity history and other things of this nature. Tulane America, their big draw is Route 66 and celebrity and film locations. You notice they mention here Route 66 and Andy Devine. This is, of course, Route Trip USA. They're a big British company. They specialize in road trips in the United States as well as Canada. And their big one is Route 66. Route 66 from its inception has always been in a state of evolution, and it's going to continue well beyond the centennial. For me personally, my mom said I was born in 90 and I never got any older. I'm most comfortable in the world of Model A Ford technology, but I'm a curious kind of person. This was an interesting experience a couple years ago. That gentleman is Richard Bosselman. He's the owner-editor of Motoring NZ, the largest automotive publication in New Zealand. And he booked a tour with New Zealand-based Gilligan's Route 66 tours and wanted to test the new electric Kia on Route 66. And the second reason for his trip, he wanted to see Kingman's Electric Vehicle Museum, which was established in 2014. Route 66 Germany, coming back this year. And this time, they are being joined with reporters from the New York Times. And they'll be here in Kingman this June. Pretty amazing, isn't it, that people all over the world know where Kingman's at? Another project I got myself involved with, this was pretty interesting. Nissan Canada put some variety of automotive journalists. You want to guess what kind of automobile they were promoting? The Nissan Kicks. They had the Kicks on Route 66. They put travel journalists, and they were filming commercials and doing automotive stories along all of Route 66. We have Route 66 Centennial certified programs here. One that's really impressive is Kingman Tours. That's the self-guided, narrated walking tour that we put together a couple of years ago with Kingman Main Street. That received official Route 66 Centennial certification. That's kind of neat. And all our neon signs downtown, all the signs that's going up. We've got people coming now, spending the evening in Kingman, just to wander around and take pictures of the signs. So they have to spend overnight. This is a group from Milan, Italy, that was downtown wandering around Kingman at 11:30 at night looking for ice cream. And we've kind of gone full circle. We started this thing out with trails. Our trails, part of our transportation history, but they're also part of our tourism history. Our trail system here, the White Cliffs Wagon Road, the Surbat Foothills Recreation Area that includes Monolith Gardens, you want to see something really surprising, do a Google search on our bicycle trails, hiking trails here. I was astounded by how many blogs and websites about mountain biking talk about these trails that are here. Kingman's definitely a destination and has a long and colorful history. It's really quite astounding when you delve into all the layers of the transportation history. Because Kingman's always been a stop on the way to, but it's also been a stop period for people who know a good thing when they see it. We've got good company here. Lots of good folks have come here over the years. Any questions I can answer for you? I'm pretty handy at making up stuff if I don't know the answer. You get a chance, I want to encourage everybody to not only explore Route 66 in your neighborhood, if you get a chance, drive it, talk to the people.
Have you ever done it?
Once or twice. Pretty much every year since about 1959.
I got another question for you, right?
I pretty much gave it up for Lent, but I only do that now on Fridays. I only drink alone or with somebody. But yes, I'll be down at Dutton Motors. They've got a new gift shop. They've turned the whole dealership into a nice museum, and I'll be down there signing books and answering Route 66 questions during the first Friday events. But you want to really have some fun and see and really get a different feel for Kingman. Take some time and use your phone, Google Translate, and take time to talk to these people. When you see them on the street taking pictures of their cameras and different things, talk to these people. It'll change your perspective about how wonderful this town is, and you'll meet some of the most amazing and fascinating and inspirational people. I'll give you a couple examples. Before the apocalypse of 2020, I met a gentleman. He was a World War II veteran. This would be 2018. So you figure out how old this guy was. When he got out of the Navy at the end of the war, he was shipped into Norfolk, Virginia. And he and his wife moved to California. He had a 1940 Harley Davidson in a sidecar. They went to California. They decided to recreate that trip. They lived in Florida. They started restoring a Harley Davidson 1940 with a sidecar, with a plan to drive from Florida to Oklahoma City, pick up Route 66, and continue to California. Well, in the process, his wife got sick and passed away. He was diagnosed with lung cancer. They took out one lung and part of his other lung. And the doctor said, your traveling days are pretty much over. And he explained to the doctors that he had told his wife he was going to take her to California. So he loaded her ashes in the sidecar. He loaded his oxygen equipment in the sidecar. And he went to California. Some of the strangest things you'll find on Route 66, you'll meet. It's the world's longest circus sideshow. And Route 66 is America's longest small town. It is literally a linear community. But you'll meet the interesting people. This doesn't pertain to Kingman, but it gives you an example of the people you'll find out here. And I want to apologize in advance. I have a very dark sense of humor. A few years ago, I had a French fella, and I can't answer everybody, but I had a Frenchman contact me, and over a period of a year, he kept asking Route 66 questions and odds and ends. What he didn't tell me was that he was a French mime, and that he intended to do a stilt walking record. 6-foot stilts from Navy Pier, Chicago to Santa Monica Pier in California. In August. Well, I found out later that he made it to Oklahoma before he had a heat stroke and quit the endeavor. And the first thing that came to my mind was, how does a French mime call for help in Oklahoma? But you'll meet the most astounding people. And these people with these tour companies and things, they'll save for years to take these trips. They'll recreate childhood trips. They'll bring their kids, trips that they took. They'll bring their kids on these adventures. And you will just meet Japanese ultra-marathon runners that are recreating the Bunyan Derby, the 1928 foot race. People bring their Fiat Pandas and BMW Izettas, ship them from Europe. They're driving. I met a group a couple years ago, motorcyclists, and the only qualification to join them on the trip You had to have a motorcycle manufactured before 1916.
Oh, Lord. Jim, can we get you to draw the raffle ticket? Yeah. Thank you. There you go. Thank you very much. Rosanna wants to take your picture, I think.
Stand together.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is for the trial.
I want to thank you all for coming. It's wonderful, and thank Jim for coming and speaking. I'm sure we all learned something. The schedule for our summer concerts you can pick up at the table on your way out. Our first concert will be April the 12th, Arizona Thunder down at Metcalf Park. So hopefully we'll see you there. And thanks again to everybody for coming, and thanks again to Jim for
Thank
the
you,
wonderful
Robin.
presentation.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a joy.